Hey guys, welcome back to the Lit Mag Lab podcast. I'm Jazz Marie, aka Vevna Forrow. So previously on the podcast, I was showing you around Moksha. Moksha again is a submission management system, and there are several other ones out there. I've covered quite a few on this podcast, so totally listen back to that episode. Don't forget to check out episode 56 again, where I cover all the ones I'm aware of. In terms of ways to intake submissions if you're going to start your own lit mag or journal. So today's episode is going to be more so under the slide episode. We're going to take a closer look at palette poetry. And yeah, I just want to show you their setup a little bit, discuss some things about palette poetry that that I think others should be aware of. And yeah, so let's get started here. Now, we'll read the about section here, and I'll go into a few things before we go on the site and tour it a little bit more. So, Palette Poetry, they're based in the United States. It doesn't say where exactly, but I think if you go on their website, one of the addresses they have listed is Bend, Oregon. So, yeah. So, Palette Poetry is an online literary journal that endeavors to uplift and platform emerging and established poets. Their mission is to create a nourishing and brave space for poetic voices, whether new, emerging, or established, especially those that often go unheard or unrecognized. Their goal is to recognize and publish the most innovative and exciting poetry that they can. Palette firmly believes writers should be compensated for their work and is a paying market. They pay $50 per poem accepted. They do not charge fees for featured poetry submissions and offer a quick response submission option for writers of historically marginalized identities. All creative work published in Palette comes through their submission windows. They do not solicit poetry, whether for featured poetry or for their contests. So, yeah, that's about them. I quoted that off of Chill Subs again, and I have episodes on that if you're curious what Chill Subs is. But they were founded in 2018, so they've been around for, right, 7 years, right? And yeah, you may notice here on Chill Subs, right, it says affiliations, Discover New Arts LLC. And you're probably like, what is that? I was also like, what's that? I didn't really know this until this year. And doing this podcast, I was like, oh, they're affiliated with something. And yeah, so before we go back on here in terms of their stats and stuff, I want to talk about Discover New Arts LLC. I think it's actually without the S, so just Discover New Art. And they do have a website. So let's take a look at it. So this is their site, Discover New Art DNA. Yeah, so a bunch of lit mags, journals, and maybe even presses, I think, are affiliated with them. DNA, the abbreviation. And, I don't think a lot of poets and writers submitting to some of the places listed here are aware of that. Perhaps they just submit through, let's say Submittable or wherever, right? The places, has it to intake submissions, right? And maybe they're not aware that Discover New Arts, they're affiliated with that, right? And you're probably like, what is it? What is it? So, yeah. I'll read the about here in a bit, but you can see here the master's review is part of Discover New Art and craft, and also palette poetry, which we're covering in this episode today. There's frontier poetry and fractured lit, and also Uncharted magazine, Red Mare Press, and Literistic, which I think deals again with collective list of contests, deadlines, and it's an email list of subscribers. So they have a interconnected network here, of lit mags and journals and presses. It's pretty interesting. I don't know again how many are aware of this. I know Lit Mag News, Becky has covered this a bit, but I want to talk about it a little bit further again because I don't think a lot of poets and writers are really aware of this. And in terms of Discover New Art, right, they have the bio, but I think that's basically it. Their values, about it, right, what they care about, their mission and stuff. So if we go to the contact, they just have this contact inbox here, right? We don't really have information about who runs it visible on their website, which I think would be beneficial, right? Anytime I think you have a supportive network of lit magazine journals or an affiliation of some kind, and it's quite large, right? I think it's important to be able to see who's behind it, who founded it, who runs it, Even lit mags and journals, right? They have board members listed. We don't necessarily have to see photos all the time, but it's nice to have first and last names, maybe a bio about them. So I think there are a lot of question marks around Discover New Art till today. And anyways, I think, any place that, is looking to support literary journals and magazines, or writers, I think that's great. But I think it's important to be very clear about who's running it, names and all of that, right? Because I think in Lit Mag News, and I'll put the articles I was reading about for you guys to read on this. And there are ways, of course, to find, who runs LLCs and organizations, right? But I think it's not really clear. There's a lot of question marks on, Discover New Art till today. Anyways, I'm going to read the About section. Discover New Art is a growing dynamic group of literary platforms that seeks to support and celebrate contemporary writers. They're thoughtful and careful when considering innovative ways to better serve literary artists. They are passionate about sharing their knowledge and are committed to helping others succeed. All of their editors are also writers, understand all facets of the publishing process, and know how challenging it can be to preserve as artists, and know how challenging it can be to persevere as artists. They treat every submitter and every contributor with the honesty and respect they expect ourselves. And yeah, they were founded in 2011. They continue to curate positive and uplifting experiences for today's writers. Their submission cycles are designed to provide an abundance of opportunities for those writers seeking publication and recognition for their work. Every Discover New Art platform offers always open, always free submissions alongside exciting cyclical contests adjuncted by some of the most lauded experts in the industry. They treasure their partnerships with authors, agents, and instructors because that allows them to offer the most compelling literature to their readers. Overall, they thrive on creative collaboration internally and externally, and they are truly honored by the steadfast support and eager readership of their literary community. So, yeah, again, you can see all of if you're watching the video out on YouTube or Spotify or elsewhere, right, that the Master's Review is part of Discover New Art Craft as well, and Palette Poetry, Frontier Poetry, Fractured Lit, Uncharted Magazine, Red Mare Press, Literistic. That basically is a mailing subscriber list on being formed on contest and calls. But yeah, so I have personally myself submitted to Palette Poetry a couple of times, and I was never really aware of Discover New Art or that affiliation. I'm not sure when that affiliation took place, but even with Frontier Poetry, I've submitted to them. The other ones I can't remember if I have, but in either case, you're probably wondering, well, should I submit to any of these? And that's totally up to you. I think you just want to be very mindful about some things with literary magazines and journals or any place you're interacting with, right? A lot of places have, we'll go back to the stats here, but if we go on to Palette Poetry's website, you can see here, right? And you scroll to the bottom, a lot of websites, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, right, they'll have terms and conditions or privacy policies. Not all, but I think it's a good idea if you're starting your own lit mag journal to have this. So yeah, whenever you're, dealing with submission management systems, right, you're entering in your personal details, right? They typically have your name, maybe it's your pen name, but typically there's an address entry, right, for a lot of places nowadays and things like that. Maybe you don't give your home address, maybe you have a PO box or a different address, I don't know. But yeah, just keep that in mind. Your information's being collected, right? They have to send out issues, right? They need to contact you for payment, maybe if you get an acceptance. Even when you're sending things via email, right? Information is being exchanged there. And anytime you visit a website, right, there are typically, right, you see those cookies pop ups. You see those cookie pop ups, right? Tracking cookies. I'm not talking about chocolate chip cookies, although I love chocolate chip cookies, as everyone in my fam knows. I'm a huge fan of soft baked chocolate chip cookies. That always cheers me up. Yeah. Anyways, on a more serious note, sites and apps, even, right? You're aware, right? There's this whole thing, even with like Facebook, social media apps, right? How they collect data and how it's used, right? That data. Some companies, right, have done some rather fishy thing. I'm not talking about lit mags lit mags and presses, but it can happen, right? The information you're sending or anytime you visit a website and it has tracking cookies, right, it's collecting information about your session. And that can entail a lot of different things, in terms of everything from what you access, your browsing history, right? It can collect a lot of data on you, right? Yeah, so you want to be very careful about that, like what you search, things like that, where you are located, there are things that know your IP address, right? And keep tabs on that, so be careful, right? So it's not always necessarily where you're entering information to a form of some kind. Sometimes it's just accessing or visiting a website, right? And you click on those pop-ups that you see. You want to read carefully what you're clicking on, right? Even I think there's been concerns about, again, a lot of social media apps, right? TikTok, all of those, right? Where it's tracking your, activity and stuff like that, right? Think about, on the back end, there's a lot of data being collected. I'm not trying to scare you and saying don't submit to lit mags and journals and presses. I mean, I'm just saying it's a risk we take when we're submitting to places, right? Or any places we interact with, any apps we download. They collect information on us, and it's not necessary. It can be sometimes just when we're accessing it, right? And there have been events across time in history where hackers have gotten a hold of information and things like that. Or even some companies have done shady things with the information, although they tell you they don't do sell your information or anything, right? You just want to be careful, right? That's all I'm saying. So, anyways, if you're going to start your own Lit Mag Journal Press, I mentioned this on some of the episodes, I think Bottle Cap Press and a few others. Just read the terms and conditions or privacy policies. A lot of places have those. If you scroll to the bottom of the site, not every place has identical wording. Yeah, sure, some things are similar, but you want to read that very carefully. I'm not going to, of course, scroll through all of the terms and conditions and read that for you on this podcast. But please be mindful about those privacy policies and terms and conditions. And also just be aware of that, Yeah, things like, I mostly just want to say, organizations like Discover New Art exist, probably others out there. Again, I think it would be really nice if they had, information on who's running Discover New Art, because it's not visible on this website as of October 2025. And I think that's concerning, right? We like to know who's behind, this group, like behind it, the whole team, involved. It'd be nice to have names involved and things like that, So absolutely, I think any place that has a mission to support others is great. But I think if you read the past LitMag news articles that Becky has posted, and I'll link them below. I think they're both public. It's very interesting, and kind of, it raises question marks, I think even with some lit magazine journals, right? I think we always want to see who's on the masthead, the staff, right? We like to address others, when we're reaching out to them, and things like that in our cover letters, etc. So it's yeah. So just keep that in mind. Discover New Art is, an umbrella behind a lot of these, or connected to these lit mags and journals, right, and press, right? I saw here. I've heard, others had gotten, valuable feedback from Frontier Poetry, and I have entered actually when I was starting out submitting to places. I ended up, coughing up, I think it was like $20 or whatever the contest amount was for palette poetry back then. And of course, I didn't win, but a lot of the contest fees and things that they have, or some of these places, it goes towards, obviously operations, paying writers for their work and stuff like that. Yeah, but I just thought it was interesting because I don't I don't know how many are aware of Discover New Art till today. So I just wanted to talk about it again, just so you know it exists. I don't really know how they got affiliated with it, or what it all entails, right? Being connected to Discover New Art, yeah. So some lit mags and journals, again, do have, full-fledged larger teams behind them on the back end, or are tied to something. It's not always necessarily a university or college affiliation or school, association. Sometimes there are larger organizations like Discover New Art, on the back end, maybe, doing other things. I don't know what it all entails, in terms of support, what that is. I think it'd be nice to see a breakdown of like what the support, it really entails. Is it financial support? Is it, what is it really? Or is it just, something else. I don't know. I'm just not sure how it all works. The affiliation with Discover New Art between Palette Poetry and these other ones. But yeah, some of these places have been around for quite some time. Yeah, so I think, I'm all for, lit magazine journals joining up and supporting one another. I've seen that happen even, places that don't have like an affiliation with organization. So I like the whole aspect of community and support, but again, I think transparency would be nice on the names, tied to Discover New Art, in the future. So hopefully they do that at some point in time. Yeah, so I don't know, yeah, I don't know much about it, but just be aware of that, right? Yeah. So let's go back to Chill Subs here. Yeah, so affiliated with Discover New Art LLC. They have let's see, they had been on so it looks like Best of the Net. Some work they had selected was had won Best of the Net at some point in time. Industry rankings, Fishlicious 449 out of 1,830. Clifford Garstang Poetry 56 out of 130. Breck Top 1,000 Poetry 77 out of 1,000. Masthead, so we have, I apologize, mispronounce any names. And Joshua Rourke is the founding editor. So yeah, and so they have, peers and collections, the 1% Club, good, good. I'm not going to swear on this podcast, but I'll change it to Good Fudging Luck. And Lit Mags featured in Best of Net anthologies. Poetry magazines featured in the Best of Net anthologies. So yeah, yeah. So it's very tough to get into, get an acceptance from Palette Poetry, right? Their acceptance rate is 1.29%, guys. And yeah, I totally know some poets in the community who have got acceptances from Palette Poetry, and even, Frontier Poetry. I could be wrong, but I think they focus more so on emerging writers or writers that haven't been published a ton, in terms of poetry collections and stuff like that. I could be wrong. I can't remember. It's been a while. But I have submitted to them in the past, like when I was starting out. I took a break from submitting, but occasionally, once in a blue moon across the year, I circle back to places, even some places on this podcast, right? Totally. But just a thought, if anyone's. So yeah, we have nominates for prizes. Yes, a payment is $50 to $150. Response time is 84 days. Editor reported 66 days has been the average in Chilled Subs tracker. And yeah, top tier stuff, not Paris review, but close enough. Says no fee. Their contests do have fees. See the featured call right now. Deadline December 7th, 2025. The Love and Eros Prize, 3,500 awarded. So yeah, but we'll take a look at that later. So yeah, it looks like they've been bookmarked 862 times. And yeah, again, that's because they pay writers for their work. A lot of writers like to be paid for their work. And yeah. So in terms of calls, so they have, I guess I could cover it here since Chill Subs has it listed here too. So looks like they've inputted into Chill Subs too. So yeah, featured poetry. So on Palette Poetry, submissions for featured poetry is open year round to poets at any stage of their careers. They encourage, again, new and emerging poets to submit, right? They offer, payment $50 per poem, up to 150. And yeah, they aim to invite, again, underrepresented and marginalized writers to submit. Submissions are open internationally to any poet. Yeah. And I think if I click on this, it has it expanded here, right? A little bit. Open internationally to any poet writing in English. Other languages are okay to include as long as the poem is largely in English. It says do not include your name or identifying information in the packet anywhere within the packet of your poems. And yeah, they do not read submissions anonymously, but prefer identifying information be included in your cover letter, not the packet of poems. And yeah, submissions must be no more than 5 poems and must not exceed 10 pages. Yeah, it says they do not accept multiple submissions. Please submit all of your poems in one document. Please include a cover letter for your publication, history if any. Expect around 3 months for response. Now, please do not ask for an update on your submission until 4 months have passed. So yeah, yeah. So again, pretty standard, right? Just notify them if your work is accepted elsewhere. Um, they don't do anonymous reads, so yeah. So I'm not sure about that, So yeah, it says they do not read submissions anonymously. So, Submittable does have a feature to conceal cover letters and identify information. And yeah, a lot of submission man systems do. I like that about, we moved to Subfolio and we've been really happy leaving Submittable, and yeah, we have the ability to conceal cover letters. I think it's nice to conceal cover letters, if you're reading team and stuff. So yeah, that's featured poetry. And yeah, again, I like doing anonymous concealed reads, cover letters. A lot of submission man systems have that option. I don't know if they do that for their contest. We'll have to see in the guidelines. But yeah, like we left submittable again for Subfolio, and we conceal cover letters for our round of readers, so they don't see the cover letter on most categories, except for interviews, podcasts, and some of our other calls, where of course we hear someone's voice and or interview them or have them, share more about themselves through our, our newsletter or publication too. So they have a quick response for historically marginalized authors. So, yeah, so BIPOC, right? So they have a separate bucket for that, up to 5 pieces, no fee, and pays $50. So that's great. Again, poets of color, right? Writers of colors. So it says demolishing the discriminatory systems that pervade the publishing industry. And yeah, then we have the Love and Eros. So then we have the 2025 Love and Eros Prize, 3,500 awarded. Looks like the deadline again is coming up December 7th. So it's returning for its fourth run from October 6th to December 7th. And yeah, so it basically entails right from the romantic and platonic to the sweet and queer, the reverential devotion and gut-wrenching longing, and what emotions branch from love, how are we all touched by love, and what shape does it manifest as in your life. And yeah, they have, I think, different judges for their contest, and you of course can read more about it. I won't read all of it, but yeah, they have a fun fact here, and submission window. So yeah, I think Palette Poetry has a couple of contests they run every year, right? And yeah. So when you start your own Lit Mag journal, right, you could totally do it. Doesn't necessarily, obviously, if you're just starting out, typically won't be able to do a large cash prize like that. But some Lit magazine journals offer, for some contest publication as the award or a cash award for a lot of the prize related ones. So yeah, when you're starting your own limit journal, you totally can create a prize of some kind or various contests. And I think that's really fun to do. It could be themed, it could be unthemed. It's really up to you. Yeah. So it looks like they've done, the queer poetry prize. That one's spending no more than 3 poems under 10 pages. And yeah, and I covered the Love and Eros prize. So they have the 2025 free challenge. Prose poetry looks like they have a 2025 in the past. So they have a pen pal poetry challenge. So that's new. I haven't really seen this one before. So palette poetry back in the fall, this closed now, but from September 25th to October 5th, basically it was open submissions of collaborative poetry written by two or more people. They selected a winning poem to receive $800. So essentially they selected a winning poem to receive $800, and then they split the money. They let the money be split among the winning poets. And yeah, so that's fun, I think. Collaborative poetry challenges. I've done some poem collabs myself with other writers in the community way back, just for fun. It's challenging, right, to make it feel as if one poet has written it, right? But yeah, it was really fun and very cool. If you've never done a collab poem with your friend or someone in the community, I highly encourage you to do so. You may be surprised from what comes of it. I know some poets aren't fans of doing collab poetry, but I think it's fun to try new things, things you haven't done before. And yeah, so I know some other living journals have done, or even community accounts on social media have done some really great, collaborative poem challenges, and then they do readings of it. And it's really fun, collab poetry. I think it's pretty fun. So yeah, they have a free entry for the Love and Eros Prize for BIPOC historically marginalized poets that they had, right, and yeah. So I think that's basically it, in terms of the calls here that I'm seeing. Again, we covered stats. You can see how many, these aren't, again, by all means, all the submissions they've ever received in existence, but just those who track their submissions through Chill Subs, right? We have 1,184 submissions tracked through Chill Subs. Out of those, it's showing just 11 accepted and 830 rejected. So yeah, it's very tough to get into ballot poetry, yeah. So you just gotta keep trying. I recently submitted to this year, right, earlier, and I'll share maybe a place that had a fairly low acceptance rate, and I kept trying and trying and trying, at least one or two times, and eventually I did get an acceptance. I changed my approach to it, and maybe I'll share later. You just got to keep trying, on some places. Obviously, if a place has a fee, you don't want to take a huge punk. You don't want to take, you don't want to go bankrupt submitting to Lit Magazine journals. So I like fee-free windows. Any place that has fee-free windows, that's great. But yeah. Um, yeah. So let's see. So on Duotrope, right? They even have an editor interview here. It helps to read editor interviews. I think absolutely. I won't read through it all, but just know that exists on Duotrope. Again, they nominate for Pushcart Prize and Best in Net and more. And yeah, it says, again, they always work with the author, to approve final edits before they publish or any suggested edits, and they assign 4 to 5 readers per submission to ensure nothing slips through the cracks. So yeah, um, that's nice, So let's go to their website now and check out submissions. So yeah, their submission guidelines again, I basically covered that already. Poetry. So it says Pal Poetry does not consider or review AI generated work. Submissions using AI tools will be automatically declined. So that's great. Keep in mind, a lot of long-standing lit magazine journals, again, in recent years have been impacted by receiving AI generated work and plagiarism pieces a lot. And it's not always caught right away. Sometimes it's caught after the fact, and it creates a lot of messy cleanup for lit magazine journals, right? And a headache essentially, right? It's really hard nowadays. There are of course various AI plagiarism checkers tools, but they're not 100% perfect in detecting that. And yeah, so it's still an issue today. There are some analysis tools, right, that can help, minimize the likelihood of, um, you know, encountering or, not, there are tools out there that can help you, catch those things, right, and analyze that. Various platforms. I've covered an episode a little bit, sharing a few, at least one on here. But yeah, just know those tools aren't 100% accurate, but they can help. If you're a founding editor of a literary journal, to identify works that were created with AI or things like that. Um, yeah. So always good, when you're starting Let My Journal, since the rise of AI, it's good to clearly outline your AI policies, right? Just reiterate. So yeah, they do have two paid options: fast response and editorial feedback. So I've heard mixed reviews, to be honest, on Palette Poetry's feedback, and responses, additional feedback. So it's really up to you. Some places absolutely, um, yeah, so I don't know. It's really up to you. I think it helps to get additional feedback, for places that offer it. But yeah, there are ones out there that have free feedback windows, or ones that are even $5, or I think anything that's like $60, $70, $80 is really high, but $20 I've seen is pretty typical. Or we have additional feedback options too at the Lit manager I run. So yeah, it also helps, I think, cover expenses too, and helping writers at the same time. The feedback is put towards the publication, paying writers, etc. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. But something I want to point out in terms of poetry, so authors' rights. This is important. So they do not have the same policy as most places, as I've covered on this podcast, right? So just quoting this off their site as of October 25, right? So Palette Poetry holds first publication rights for 3 months after publication. after which rights revert to the author. So authors agree not to publish nor authorize or permit the publication of any part of the material for 3 months following first publication. For reprints, they ask for acknowledgement of publication palette poetry first. So they want you to wait 3 months, before you write, reshare that poem, right? Or republish it, right? Yeah, they just ask for acknowledgement. So they have a 3 month wait. So I've seen some places even have 12 months, after publication, waiting before you resubmit that piece elsewhere or republish it or anything in terms of reprints. So yeah, just be mindful about that, when you're submitting a place. Because let's say you're working on collection, you're like, oh, I want to include this poem and credit palette poetry, Well, you want to wait, right, 3 months, right, before you do anything like that, Yeah, they do have an FAQ page here, right? So yeah, and yeah, so I won't read all of this, but you can of course see my screen, right? So they just clarify a little bit further. Um, and if you need to make the revisions, they're like, just message us to the tab and they can reopen it. And I've totally done that in the past with them, and they've been really nice about that. They reopen it, you close it, you make the change. If you forgot something, right, you just close it, right. So yeah, if you want to make changes to submission, they're pretty on top of that. I heard back fairly quickly when I had submitted to them, anyways. Um, So yeah, again, if published, their platform retains first publication rights for the first 3 months and retains archival rights to keep the work online. First year rights means again that the submitter or whoever had the acceptance right won't publish the poem anywhere else in those first 3 months. After that time has passed, you just give credit. This poem first appeared in Palette Poetry. A lot of places have that, right? Whether they be online or print. That's pretty typical. I mean, in terms of like just acknowledging it, right? I don't see a lot of places have, that 3 month thing, in terms of waiting 3 months, before you can, reshare that poem or have it appear in reprints. But I have seen some places say 12 months, even, things like that. So just read carefully, yeah. Then they say again when you'll hear back, right? Typically, within 3 months from the day you submit. It says do not email choir unless it's been more than 4 months. And it says, yeah, you can use curse words in your poetry. And yeah, if, sometimes they may have suggested edits in terms of language or, no language, again, that is harmful or derogatory. Yeah, if it violates any of the values they have, right, it'll be declined. And yeah, so that's typical. Yeah, again, at the Lit Mag Journal Press I run, right, Dippity, right, we totally have published work that has cursing in it and curse words and stuff like that. I'm someone who tends not to curse a lot on podcasts, or I try to refrain from doing so. Um, in terms of my own work and writing, yes, I've totally cursed. I didn't really used to do that a bunch myself. I was raised not to curse, so I really try to not do it. You want to be mindful about, is when you're including a curse word, is it adding value to your piece, right? Or are you just cursing for the sake of cursing, right? Does it add something to it, I've seen some rather bizarre things with too many curse words filling every single line, in a piece. That I feel is a bit much, minimal is okay, I think, but yeah, that's just my opinion on that. But I know a lot of places, obviously if you read some pieces and a publication includes curse words, it's okay to curse. Not every place outright tells you that, but I think it's good to have that in FAQ, FAQ. So yeah, it's always good to have a good FAQ, and cover everything. Um, yeah, so again, they accept international submissions. Palette Poetry uses submittable, and yeah. So again, yeah, Bend, Oregon, right? That's their address, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's see. So they have a calendar. I think it's nice to show upcoming events. I don't see a lot of lit magazine journals do this, but there are a few out there, quite a few that have a schedule of what's ahead, to look forward to. So that's cool. They even have it up to 2026 here. Some of the calls, right? pretty cool, even in terms of editorial feedback, mini masterclass lessons. I don't see a lot of places really do that. They have a summer async studio, right? So what is that? So editorial feedback mini masterclass from July 7th to August 3rd, 2025, earlier in the year. Yeah, so they do some cool events and classes, I'm not sure what the cost of these are, but yeah. They have some manuscript workshops, chapbook manuscript workshops even. Again, some workshops, if I recall, with them, or classes if I was on their site earlier in the year. I can't remember, but yeah, I think there's some sort of fee if you attend those. I don't know what it is. But yeah, they have the Rising Poet Prize, the Rejected Poetry Prize, which starts December 8th through February 8th, 2026. Sometimes windows can change, but yeah, I think it's nice they have their schedule planned out in advance. And they have keynote lectures, lectures from the Poetry Prize Judge, virtual events, So yeah, that's nice, all in all, it's a very organized site. I just wanted to share with you guys because, yeah, they have a search you saw there, right? If we go back, right? So it's always nice to have a search, right? I don't know why was I searching readers? Oh, yeah. So occasionally Palette Poetry has done this, right? Where they were looking for readers, I think, at some point in time. So yeah, if you are looking for readers or volunteer staff, right? Most places intake those through Submittable, or will usually have like job listings through CLMP. If you're part of the CLMP membership, right? You may be aware that CLMP, right, helps post job openings or calls. But yeah, Palette Poetry in the past has had reader openings. So this year, this closed, but July 6th, right? They had reader openings, and yeah, sometimes I've directed others towards openings or staff, things like that. I think that's why I was searching that. So yeah. Anyways, I've been on their site a couple times in the past, because I think they have published some really cool work. Overall, they published a lot of really cool work. And they have some pretty cool contests. With very large cash award prizes, right? So I think that's what attracts a lot to Palette Poetry, right? But even if they didn't have the cash award prize and they strictly did, publications and stuff, they have a really cool, unique layout. I think absolutely, and yeah. Again, I would say, you know, so yeah, every month, they have they give some monthly deadlines, updates, and yeah, and pretty unique competitions and contests overall. They have an award section, right? So keeping track of the poetry contest results, always a good idea on your site to keep tabs on the decision results of all contests. And yeah, I think it's also a good idea to, if you're a founding ever lit man journal, to not just have that on your site but elsewhere. Yeah, so always a good idea to track the results and decisions of contests someplace others can see and visible, right? And yeah, again, yeah, so they have a submit button. You always want to make sure others can find the submit location within a few mere seconds of like visiting the site, yeah, and it's very easy to access. You shouldn't have someone digging around multiple pages, right, to find the submit button, so it's very visible, right? They even have, a side, right, panel that comes up on the so in more than one place. Always good, even linked out elsewhere. So again, they're using Submittable. Um, yeah, I've covered Submittable from a submitter's perspective and shared some things as a founding editor myself on Submittable and my thoughts on it and why we left for Subfolio. Yeah. So, anyways, you can see they have the Love and Eros Prize, right? So again, the cash award, it just reiterates all the guidelines again. They have an editorial feedback option, which is $59. That's pretty high, I'd say. And yeah, I don't, and they have a 3 letter option that costs $149, where they provide 6 pages of detailed and actual feedback on a poem of your choice from the submission, including suggestions for future submissions from 3 separate guest editors. And it says their guest editors are paid a significant portion of the fee and are all incredibly astute poets. $59 gives you 2 pages of detailed feedback on a poem of your choice from the submission, including suggestions for future submissions. So yeah, I don't know. I've heard some weren't happy with their feedback and some were with palette poetry. And I think that comes from a lot of lit magazine journals in general, whether the feedback really helped you or not. Um, yeah. So yeah, I've heard mixed reviews on the palette poetry feedback others have received. Yeah, I'm not saying it's not detailed. I don't know what it looks like. I've never done it myself or anything like that. So it's not my place to say if I haven't, received any feedback or seen what it looks like from someone else. But yeah, I've heard some mixed reviews on palette poetry's feedback option. So yeah, whether you do, I would say that's a little bit on the high side, for feedback. They do have, multiple editors, working on it, and they're giving a portion back to them. But that would be outside of my ballpark of like if I were a poet, if I were a poet or writer submitting to them and I chose an option, right, I probably wouldn't if it was that high. Yeah. Think about what you could do with $149, guys. I think that's a little bit too steep in my opinion. But they do, all the contest and feedback and all of that, right? They use a portion, right? I'm sure towards palette poetry, right? The contest, the paying writers, all of that. So yeah, so there's the featured poetry bucket, right? And yeah, again, just this again what I covered earlier, so I won't repeat it. The quick response for historically marginalized authors, and yeah, so yeah, I like seeing places that strive to make their publication diverse, and yeah, and it's free, right? So I've seen other lit magazine journals do this too, or rather I think it's nice when in general, not necessarily BIPOC windows, but I like seeing lit magazine journals that do a free response window. It could be for a week or 2 weeks, out of the whole year. That free window that everyone can submit without a fee. I like those too. Very inclusive, right, to anyone, too. But yeah, diversity is important, right? Absolutely. I think that's absolutely crucial, nowadays still. Yeah. So yeah, anyways, I do like places that really strive to, be diverse in terms of their publication and the authors and all of that, right? And the community. I'm not going to, read every guideline or contest call they have in existence, but I think that's pretty much it. They do have, again, a lot of different classes and lessons. I think in one of the episodes, I showed you Palette Poetry's website and they had some sort of a virtual, was it a feedback session event or sign up workshop? I can't remember. But yeah, so, some of those workshops and sessions, again, are pretty pricey, in some lit magazine journals and various like the price I've seen of various workshops and sessions. But considering, virtual events and someone's taking out of their time, to do so and work one on one with writers and things like that, yeah, it's hard work to do that. So, I understand about those costs. I think their feedback fees, in my opinion, are a little bit too high though. So that's my only comment. And again, just be aware again, palette poetry, is part of Discover New Art. I just wasn't aware of that till this year actually. After all the times I had been on their site, I was like, oh, what's Discover New Art? So yeah, I just wanted to share that again because I still think a lot of poets and writers don't know that, and that they're all affiliated with Discover New Art, and I think it's interesting, I don't know again if there are other organizations out there like Discover New Art. I'm sure there are, that have a network of interconnected lit magazine presses or publishing houses. I just don't know much about Discover New Art still myself or who runs it. I think Lit Mag News has some names that were found and stuff, but it's a lot of question marks there. Um, yeah. Anyways, more so I wanted to cover palette poetry. You can see they have a featured, poetry here and reminders, right, for deadlines, which is nice. very organized columns, and stuff on their site. Very organized columns, right, on their site. They have, you can see the poems that are featured, and yeah. So I like how they, choose a couple lines here, and it has like the brush strokes, behind the lines, right, of the starting piece. So I think that's a nice touch, Yeah. So yeah, again, they track contest winners and all of that, and they do have a search again. So yeah, and yeah, so the 2025 Love and Eros Prize, that is ongoing till December 7th, 2025. Again, they have like a 1% acceptance rate, very, very tough, so yeah. Writing classes like the writing salon, I think they even give like a discount, right? For those who submit to the contest, like 10%, it says there. So yeah, I don't know what the writing salon is, but it looks pretty cool, workshop critiques. I think they're useful, to work with other writers and to have classes and events and discuss, work. I don't know what it all entails, but you can look at the writing salon further. Yeah, so that's pretty cool, that's all. I just wanted to give you a quick tour of Palette Poetry, talk about it, talk about Discover New Art, that LLC, and their guidelines and contests. I think, again, just a summary here. So it's cool to run different contests with your lit mag or journal. Yeah, maybe you can't start off again right off the bat with $3,500 or several $1,000s, but typically most lit magazine journals, they have a contest entry fee, which is typical, and they use that to award the cash prize. It could be one winner, multiple winners, and yeah, it's one way to fund a contest, through submission entries. But if you're just starting out, I think, maybe a smaller cash prize. We do, like, for example, we've done $50 cash awards, $100, because we're nowhere near able to do that at the Lit Mary Press I run. So, we're not at the point yet. So yeah, a lot of lit magazine journals can't do that right about starting out, but over time, if you structure in a way, maybe you have a Patreon, right, memberships, and you use that to award the cash prize, or subscriber pledges through Substack. There are a lot of different ways you could fund a contest. Some contests are self-funded by the founding editor too, but obviously that's not ideal. But so yeah, I think $20 contest fees are generally pretty high. I totally had done that quite a bit when I was starting submitting to places myself. And, I probably lost a lot of money doing that. But I just wanted to try, I think a lot of poets want to try. They're like, I'm going to enter my first contest. And a lot of them do have fees, but not all of them. Again, I've shown you in this podcast how to find fee-free submission opportunities. Keep in mind, not all contests out there, writing and art contests, have entry fees, right? There are a lot of ones out there that are actually fee-free that you'll find. You just have to do some digging, use the databases, the searches. I've covered a couple on this podcast and earlier, in episodes. So, yeah. Um, anyways, I think, they have some interesting contests, and they've published a lot of amazing work, no doubt. So just wanted to talk about Palette Poetry. They've been around a while. I've followed Palette Poetry for quite some time, over the years, and I was, yeah, I always love reading the pieces they publish. So it's very cool again, and yeah, so just be mindful again, if you're going to start your own lit mag journal. I just want to, again, mention, right, take some time to read terms and conditions and privacy policies. Don't forget about things like that existing. If you're going to start one, or if you're a submitter, read those privacy policies, the terms and conditions. Um, again, the data we send to places, right, just keep that in mind, right? Things like that. Just be careful, right? Be cautious. And one more thing, guys. So back on the FAQ page, if we go here, they do have fee waivers from time to time. So it says limited fee waivers are available for contests, and they prioritize writers with marginalized identities, especially BIPOC. Again, during the first week of each contest window, they offer now free submissions to all BIPOC writers after they reach their fee waiver cap of 50 free submissions. They are unable to offer any additional waivers beyond that. And for, again, featured poetry, they only accept unpublished work. They do not accept self-published or previous published work. Work published on social media is also ineligible: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Medium. The only time they accept previously published work is when their previously published poem prize is open to submissions. So yeah, I think that's nice. They have a previously published poem prize, but for the most part, on all their other calls, right? No previous published work, excluding that previously published poem prize that they have. Yeah. And that policy is different for each lit mag and journal, in terms of social media, poetry, and previous published work. Some places do publish reprints and do accept those, just acknowledging where it appeared before. Some places are strictly like no, previously unpublished work, right? So some places are strictly, work that has not been seen before, right? Never been published in a lit mag or journal, right? For the most part, right? Is what I've seen in the community. And yeah, we only permit at Dippy Lit Mag, right? Previously published short stories, right? Yeah. And yeah, and then through our like interview features and stuff like that, it's okay for that, if the poem appeared on social media or a personal page. If it has appeared in a personal site or space, just let us know, right? Because it wouldn't be fair to others for obviously nomination events and things like that. If the work has been published already, right, it'd be ineligible, it'd be disqualified, right? So you want to keep that in mind. Yeah, you want to be upfront about that. We've seen from time to time at the own Lit Mag and Press I run, right, that poets sometimes they just sent a bunch of poems to us that had already all been published. We found all of them where they were located, and yeah, and obviously we couldn't publish that because it's against our policy for that call that we had, and in terms of poetry. So be mindful about that, and yeah, if you're going to set up your lit mag or journal, think about it. Do you want to accept previous published work? Do you want to have some calls do that? Do you want to have a contest call around that of some kind, or not allow that at all? Most lit magazine journals and presses out there are have a no, previously published work policy, right? And yeah, but there are places I've shared on this podcast that do permit social media shares, and they'll just let them know it has, be upfront about that. This poem has appeared this place or was on social media. For the most part, again, to find places that accept reprints, you can do searching through chill subs, some of the other directories, and yeah, there's some, list out there that others have made around that too. But yeah, that's pretty much it. There absolutely are some lit magazine journals that do publish social media poetry or reshares, just crediting where it appeared first. But yeah, so that's all. I think again, I really like seeing lit mags and journals offer workshops, resources, and you know, um, things like that. So yeah, it's nice that they have a resources page. Curated by their editors and reading team. And I think the writing salon, I don't remember where we saw that, but you can look back. The classes and events are pretty cool. I was just looking a little bit further, right? So it looks like they do, poetry classes, publishing, professional development classes, screenwriting, playwriting. Yeah, they've offered creative writing classes in the Bay Area since 1999. So that's awesome. Yeah, and then palette poetry from time to time. I see again, workshops and various events and stuff that they have. I think I showed you in one of these podcast episodes. Wasn't it like a workshop or something? I can't remember exactly. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, they have a lot of really great resources, I think, and classes and events. And even exercises, and some things here, craft notebook. Yeah. So I think it helps to, read any of the resources, items the place has. You know, they have advice on rhyming, punctuation, proofreading, cover letter basics, so take the time to check it out from time to time. I think I never clicked this, but there's just like never clicked on the, I don't know if you could see that. I had a recaptcha right there, but anyways. Um yeah. So that's palette poetry. Yeah, so totally check it out, Um yeah. So that's all. They've published a lot of again amazing work, and I just wanted to share it. So yeah, I think this is a WordPress based website. Yeah. But any case, it's a yeah, it's a clean layout. You can see all publications featured. And they have a search. When you dig around on their website, so that's great. And yeah, so I just wanted to talk about a little bit and discover new arts and things to take consideration. Um, yeah, it is has a very low acceptance rate, so just keep that in mind. That doesn't mean again you shouldn't try for places that have low acceptance rates, 1% or 2%. Just know that it's gonna be challenging. Um, yeah, so I've submitted to places that have had 6% or less than 50% acceptance rates, and it took a couple tries with some places, and yeah, in some places I did get acceptance in the first try, but some of those poems I ironed out, after several rejections, and yeah, and then finally found homes for them. But it's different for everyone, so yeah, again, don't be afraid of places that have low acceptance rates, but again, don't feel the need you have to cough up money for contests and calls, because there are a lot of fee-free ones out there. If you do some searching, you'll find them. And yeah, check out the episodes where we're showing how to find free calls too. And yeah, you'll find it in the typically the Q&A portions of the episode without the circles. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's palette poetry. Feel free to check it out. A lot of awesome reads in terms of poetry for sure. And yeah, again, they're completely online literary magazine, and yeah, they've been around for 7 years. So just showing you, different lit mags and journal setups. And I think Palette Poetry has some fairly large contests, like showed you with only poems too, and Rattle, right? Very large contests and cash awards. To be able to facilitate again that, there are different ways you could approach that, but for the most part, what most lit mags and journals, and don't forget that Chill Subs has that contest calculator tool I talked about earlier, which I found out about through Lit Mag News, but yeah, a lot of lit magazine journals use the entry fees typically of contests to facilitate large cash awards. But if you're just starting out, again, you might just want to start with a small, if you want to do a cash award, some kind of very small one, then you can increase the award amount if you can, for long term, yeah. But yeah, I think it's interesting, every lit mag journal, the different contest calls they have, some are themed, some aren't, and it's pretty neat to see. And just one more thing I want to tack on for you guys before I sign off. So, yeah, in terms of editorial feedback and additional feedback on your submission, for a poem or things like that, just if you're looking for that feedback, right? Just keep in mind, if you're going for a paid feedback option, do it within your budget. Absolutely, you can lose a lot of money in terms of not just with feedback, but with anything that has a fee over it, right? Real fast. So you want to make sure, that you're certain, right? Whichever place you're going for additional feedback or things like that. And yeah, in terms of receiving feedback from lit magazine journals that have a fee, right? I've honestly heard mixed reviews from others on lit magazine journals in general across the community. So you're probably like, well, how do I know? I'm going to get feedback that is what I'm looking for. What if I'm not happy with my feedback? Well, most places do have non-refundable feedback fees and stuff like that. So you just, and even with submission fees, same thing. The only time I've ever seen refunds given are like if a fast response, for some places is not met, right, and things like that. So obviously Chill Subs has that recommendation section, right? I'm sure you saw it on quite a few lit magazine journals. I've stopped by their Chill Subs overview page. Not every place has reviews or recommendations yet there, but that's one way, I guess, to gauge, things like that. You may come across things online, to Reddit or Lit Mag News. I personally wouldn't be able to tell you, what the feedback is like at Palette Poetry or Frontier Poetry. I think they have additional feedback options and elsewhere, right? So I wouldn't be able to tell you that, but in most cases, you know, there are a lot of editors, absolutely, that invest a lot of time into giving you detailed feedback, to help you to really work with you, on your piece. And yeah, so for future submissions or wherever you may send that piece or decide to do with it, it can help. It's hard getting feedback, honest feedback on your work. I know some poets have had bad experiences with some lit magazine journals, and some have had really great experiences in terms of paying for additional feedback. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It's hard, right? But just know you don't have to cough up, 300, 400, $500 for feedback. Or I think, again, 149, it's three-letter option. That's a lot, but I think that's still outside of most writers' range, in terms of feedback. So yeah, for some that may be worth it, or some may say, again, I think $149 is a lot, and $59, but I think in terms of like longer works, like chapbooks, manuscripts, yeah, it makes sense for the fee to be higher. It takes longer time, I guess, to review those. But yeah, when you have multiple people, giving feedback and providing feedback, yeah, I guess that could, and it's going back to the editors or those involved and the publication. Yeah, I guess the fee is going towards those things, right? So everyone's fee and pricing structure in terms of feedback and submission fees is different. Some places have zero fees, some places give you fee feedback. So they're out there, so don't feel you have to absolutely pay for feedback. But I think workshops and sessions and one-on-ones and things like that are very beneficial too. Discussing your work and ironing out, I think it's absolutely valuable. So I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying, be mindful of your pocket, right? You can lose a lot of money real fast in the lit mag world, or submitting your writing and art in general, if you're not careful, right? Just be careful about that. You want to feel like, oh, I paid whatever amount money, and I feel like I got, really valuable feedback from this lit mag journal, right? You want to feel that way after paying that fee, right? You don't want to feel like, oh, I feel like I wasted my money, on that feedback, and it didn't really help me. So you never want to feel that way, right? So I'm just saying that be cautious. Take the time to, there are some reviews on some lit magazine journals out there outside of my podcast, outside of this, on some blogs and other places, even in comment sections and things like that. So you're bound to find it. I wouldn't be able to tell you again, what the feedback experiences are like with a lot of these lit magazine journals. But I know, again, a lot of editors absolutely do take their time to provide detailed feedback the best they can, to try and help others. And yeah, I have watched a couple, in the past, workshop sessions and things myself, of how events are structured and stuff. And yeah, so I think it can be beneficial if you're someone who likes discussing work and stuff. There are some poets who do one-on-one workshops in the community too, with writers for a fee, right? Attendance. I see quite a lot of those. A lot of poets on Substack hosting those too, or sign up events and stuff too as well. But there are a lot of really cool places out there. Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, on this about section too, I do really like how they explain how submissions are reviewed, right? So multiple readers, and quoting this off their site, multiple readers share their comments on submissions that make it to the second round of consideration. This process allows for readers to highlight strengths and details in poems that might have been missed by other readers. Then the associate editor and editor-in-chief have live meetings to discuss the final selection of poetry, with the goal of publishing quality poetry that represents the most variety in form, content, voice, and perspective. This process also applies to curating a short list of poems for the judges' consideration. They bring in guest judges so that they will select and celebrate unique poems. This is for contests, right? So during contests, they also sometimes publish finalist poems that were not selected by the judge but were well loved by editors. And again, they have some other things here, right? So again, they request all submitters include content warnings, trigger warnings, right? Anything of that nature. And yeah, and there are other things here, right? Of course, pretty standard too. So, anyways, I really love that they are very clear about their, rounds of review and stuff. Multiple readers, right, involved. So I think it helps to have, yeah, absolutely, as they said, rounds of review on a reading team. Having everyone make comments, then it goes further and further, and the editor reviews in the final stage. So yeah, that's pretty much the structure we have too at the Lit Mag Journal and Press I run. Lit Mag and Press I run too. So yeah, very very clear. So yeah, and yeah, and they have, I think, every reader complete, and yeah, they have every reader complete anti-bias training and extensive reading and written reflection. So that's great. Training absolutely is, I think, important. Yeah, that's great. So they have their values and mission statement, everything on their site. So that's pretty much it. Yeah. So totally, yeah, I just wanted to share about Poetry Talk a little about it, and point out a few things, that I just came to mind. I just realized that about the editor in chief there and the about section. I typically cover that first, but I lost some audio, so I forgot to circle back to that. And yeah. So, anyways, yeah, I hope this episode helped you. Me talking through the guidelines a little bit, some things that to keep in mind. Whether you be a submitter or looking to start your own lit magazine journal, or press one day. Yeah, so take care, guys. Yeah, double PS note here, guys. So I think the current editor in chief, yeah, I don't know if you caught that, but yeah, maybe they didn't update it on Chill Subs again, So yeah, but I think the founding editor, right, is yeah, Joshua Rourke. Editor in chief, I think changed at some point in time, and yeah, could have been last year. I'm not sure exactly when, but Alicia, I apologize, I'm gonna mess up the last name here. Maybe Nguyen or Nguyen, Alicia Nguyen, and yeah. I'm sorry if I'm completely messed up the last name. I'm so sorry. I apologize in advance. um yeah, so just keep that in mind. So what you see on Chill Subs, again, it has to be updated by the team. Sometimes I even forget to update those fields. I'm like, oh, I forgot to update this, I'm so sorry. But yeah, for the most part, I think it's always best to follow what's current on their website, or do compare and contrast between Chill Sub, not just Chill Subs, but look on their website for the guidelines, the call bucket, duotrope, right? Always verify that, because sometimes it takes a bit for some spaces where the listings also are for information to be updated either by the editor, or sometimes platforms like duotrope, right, for the calls and details to be updated. So I always recommend following what's on the website, what's current there. But yeah, I'm sure they'll update that soon. But yeah, you can see the current masthead here. This appears to be current, I think. So yeah, I just wanted to tack that on because, yeah, that's it. So bye, yeah. Bye now, yeah.